Hello, my name is Travis Seale-Carlisle. I'm a lecturer of psychology at the University of Aberdeen. In this talk, I'll be sharing some results from two experiments that investigated whether interactive lineups can improve eyewitness memory performance. This is an Arnold-funded project, and the data for this project can be found at the links shown on the slide. We developed and tested an interactive lineup, and we tested whether this lineup can improve discrimination accuracy compared to a static photo lineup. In an interactive lineup, each face can be rotated and held in any position along the vertical axis, from left profile to right profile. This allows the eyewitness to dynamically view each face at different orientations. There are several good reasons to predict that an interactive lineup will enhance discrimination accuracy compared to a standard frontal photo lineup. First, discrimination accuracy is higher when participants actively explore test faces compared to when they passively view someone else interacting with those test faces. Second, face recognition accuracy is viewpoint dependent, meaning that accuracy is better when a test face is presented in the same pose in which it was studied. Third, motion cues elicited when eyewitnesses explore the faces in an interactive lineup should improve discrimination accuracy compared to viewing those faces in a static photo lineup. Lastly, the interactive procedure should also enable participants to view and detect more diagnostic or non-diagnostic facial features. That opportunity is not available when passively viewing the front of the faces in a photo lineup. Each of these areas of research suggests that interactive lineups will yield greater face recognition accuracy or discrimination accuracy than static lineups. A separate issue that affects eyewitness memory performance is the own race bias. We know that other race faces are 1.4 times more likely to be misidentified than same race faces. We also know that about 50% of identifications are made by witnesses of another race. And there is limited evidence that interactive lineups might minimize or reduce the own race bias. So in this experiment, we asked two questions. The first question is, do interactive lineups enhance discrimination accuracy or recognition accuracy more than static photo lineups? And do interactive lineups attenuate or minimize the own race bias? We had several manipulations. Participants viewed a video of a white or South Asian male commit a mock crime, and the experimenters took great care to make sure that the videos were well controlled so that the white and South Asian videos were as similar as possible. Half the participants in the experiment were South Asian and half were white. Half of the lineups contained a target from one of the mock crime videos and half did not. Lastly, half of the lineups were interactive and half were static. The experiment started with a mock crime video, followed by a brief distractor task and a lineup. So in this example, this is the static lineup. Participants then studied another mock crime video, took part in another distractor task, and saw another lineup. This cycle repeated 8 times, such that each participant made 8 identification decisions. Participants were randomly assigned to the lineup condition, so participants either saw static lineups or interactive lineups. We collected 220 participants in total. Half were white and half were South Asian. Here are the ROC data for the interactive and static lineups. As you can see, the interactive lineup yields a higher ROC than the static lineup. We generated the curved line going through the operating points by fitting a signal detection model to these ROC data. That model accounts for all possible ID responses, so correct IDs, filler IDs, target present filler IDs, target absent filler IDs. And it assumes that participants identify the most familiar person in the lineup. So as you can see here, the model provided an adequate fit to the ROC data. To compare the ROCs, we calculated the area underneath each ROC. This is known as the partial area underneath the curve, or PAUC for short. We did this for the interactive lineup as shown here, as well as the static lineup as shown here. So consistent with our first hypothesis, ROC analysis revealed that the interactive lineup procedure achieved significantly greater PAUC than the static lineup. This means that interactive lineups improve participants' abilities to discriminate between innocent and guilty suspects. Another way to think about this result is that for any possible achievable false ID rate, interactive lineups increase the correct ID rate by 18%. We also tested whether the interactive lineups can attenuate or minimize the own race bias. There is some indirect evidence that interactive lineups might be able to do that. So here we observed the own race bias in both the interactive lineup condition and the static lineup condition. These data suggest that interactive lineups do not attenuate the own race bias. The difference in PAUC between own and other race identifications is similar for interactive and static lineups. The results from the previous experiment showed that interactive lineups yield better discrimination accuracy than static lineups. Here we investigate two additional types of interactive lineups. The first is the simultaneous independent lineup. This lineup shows 6 faces simultaneously, but only one face moves at a time. In the simultaneous joint movement lineup, interacting with one face moves all the faces in the lineup in unison. In this experiment, we asked, does the presentation format of interactive lineups influence its accuracy? And might the simultaneous joint movement lineup attenuate or minimize the own race bias? We had several manipulations in this experiment as well. The perpetrator in the mock crime video was either white or South Asian. Participants were either white or South Asian. Participants viewed either a target present or target absent lineup, and they were assigned to one of 3 different types of lineups. So, participants first watched a mock crime video. The perpetrator in the video was either white or South Asian. Participants then took part in a filler task and then saw a lineup. So, participants were assigned to the interactive sequential lineup, or the interactive simultaneous independent lineup, or the interactive simultaneous joint movement lineup. In total, 8,507 participants completed the experiment. About 4,200 were white and 4,200 were South Asian. Similar to experiment 1, we measured discrimination accuracy by conducting ROC analysis and calculating the partial area underneath the curve. This analysis revealed that the simultaneous interactive lineups improve discrimination accuracy compared to the sequential interactive lineup. It may not matter if the faces in the simultaneous lineup move independently or in unison. Both simultaneous lineups outperformed the sequential lineup. And again, another way to think about this result is that for any possible achievable false ID rate, simultaneous joint lineups increase the correct ID rate by 23%. As in experiment 1, we replicated the own race bias. Own race identifications were more accurate than other race identifications, and this was true regardless of lineup type. Unfortunately, neither one of the simultaneous lineups reduced the own race bias. So that difference in PAUC between the own race identifications and other race identifications remained the same, or it was very similar across the 3 different lineup procedures. More research is needed to determine ways of minimizing the own race bias. To summarize, interactive lineups can enhance discrimination accuracy. Interactive lineups are compatible with current legal frameworks, and interactive lineups do not seem to reduce the own race bias. I'd like to thank our research assistants that have helped tremendously in this project, and thank you very much for listening. I will show a series of slides for the confidence accuracy relationships for each of our lineup conditions. So here are the CACs for experiment 1. Here are the CACs for experiment 2, collapse across own race and other race decisions. And here are the CACs for experiment 2, separated by own race and other race decisions. Thank you very much for listening.